This lesson will introduce you to personal pronouns. Now, pronouns take the place of nouns, and personal referring to the first or second or third, that is, I, you, he, she, it, we, they, you plural, and so on. Primarily, you're going to just be learning the forms here, but we'll also talk about a very particular type of pronoun, the reflexive pronoun, in a little bit more detail. So the first person pronouns, we've got the singular in the first column and the plural in the second. And the singulars are ego, mei, mihi, me, me. Nominative, genitive, dative, accusative, ablative. Now, a few notes. The nominative is used as the subject, but really, ego was going to be used for emphasis. Because woko, if we just have a verb, like woko, I call, this O suggests that it signifies that I am the subject anyway. But if we say ego woko, then you're placing the emphasis on the I. I am the one calling. Same thing goes with the plural, and all of these pronouns. Mehi, the genitive, is not for possession. You're going to use an adjective for that, and we'll talk about that in a later lesson. What you will use this for, though, is things called the objective genitive primarily. Again, you'll learn that in later lessons. But just know for now that mei is not used for possession. Mihi, the dative, is used in all your regular dative uses. So it can be, he is giving, he gives, dot, dona, mihi. He gives gifts to me. Me, the accusative, direct object. So we could say spectat me, he sees me, he looks at me. And me, the ablative, is going to be used in ways that you use the ablative. So if it's an ablative of personal agent, a me, or in a very special note, take note of this, if it's going to be with me, in Latin, we're going to render that me cum. We're going to put the cum at the end of me and attach it, so me cum. Same situation goes with the plurals, nos, nostri or nostrum, nobis, nos, nobis. So the nominative is used for emphasis. Nos curimus, we are running. Nostri is going to be used for that objective genitive. Again, we'll talk about that later. And nostrum is the partitive idea. So if I were to say part of us, pars nostrum. But these are not, again, not possession. Nobis, the dative, for dative of interest or dative of indirect object. Dative of agent with passive periphrastic, all those uses. The accusative for direct objects. And nobis, again, with prepositions. Or again, if you want to say with us, we're going to render that nobiscum. So ego mei mihi me me, nos nostri nostrum, nobis nos nobis. The second person, you, again we have singular and plural. Tu, tui, tibi, te, te. Same thing applies as we did with the first person. So tu is for emphasis, tui, not possession. I can't emphasize that enough. But for other genitive uses, tibi, the dative, for dative uses, te, accusative, and te, the ablative, again, take special note, tecum, with you. And in the plural, the same applies as we did with the first person. Vos, vestri, vestrum, vobis, vos, vobis. Again, for emphasis, the genitive, either for the objective genitive or for the partitive genitive, but not possession. Vobis, the dative, vos, the accusative direct object, and vobis, the ablative, for use with prepositions, particularly if we are going to use cum, it will be vobis cum. Another way to look at these, and I'll just show you these in terms of, for you to see patterns. In the singular, so I and you, a lot of similarities, so ego, tu, no similarity there. But mei, tui, mihi, tibi, me, te, definitely a pattern going on there. Should aid your memorization. And in the plural, the pattern is even stronger. We're either going to have an N or a V. And if you've learned other Romance languages, this pattern shouldn't be a surprise to you. So nos, vos, nostri, nostrum, vestri, vestrum. Watch that this is an E and not an O. Nobis, vobis, nos, vos, nobis, vobis. So the plural has a nice pattern for you to watch. And the N or the V is what will determine whether it's first person or second person. The third person, as we already discussed, is going to be given, so the third person pronouns, the he, she, it, or they, is going to be rendered by the demonstratives is, ea, id. We won't go into much detail there. But now, like I said, there's this special version, the third person reflexive. And I think the best way to look at the reflexive is to give you some English examples first. He is talking to himself. This himself is the reflexive. It's pointing back. It's the same person as the subject. So a reflexive is the same person or thing as the subject, but in a different case. So we've got the same person in the nominative here, he, and he's talking to himself. We're going to have the dative here. So we have to find some way to indicate that the same person is both the subject and the indirect object. Or in this second sentence, they see themselves in the mirror. Themselves is the reflexive. It refers to the same person, people, as the subject. But here we have a nominative and an accusative. So we need to find some way to indicate that both the nominative and the accusative, or that the accusative is referring to the same person as the subject. And she has a great love of herself. Herself here, the reflexive, refers back to she. So we've got to find some way to indicate that this genitive of herself, love of herself, this is the what we call the objective genitive, is the same person as the subject. So how do we do that? Well, we have a handy-dandy set of pronouns. There is no nominative. And if you take a few moments to think about it, the nominative is the subject of the sentence, and we need something to refer to an oblique case of the same person. So we don't need a nominative. The nominative has already been mentioned. But we do need a genitive, sui. So she has a great love for herself. She has, habet. We could say, ea habet. Amorem, a love. Amorem sui, a love of herself. So this reflexive says, this person referred to here is also the person referred to in the subject. Sibi, himself or herself or themselves, right? So this is important to take note. Sui, sibi, say is both singular and plural. It just depends on the subject. So if I say, he gives himself gifts, dona, sibi, dot, he gives gifts to himself, it's singular here. But if we change the subject to the men, weary, dona, sibi, dant. Here it's plural, our subject is plural. Sibi is referring to the subject, it's reflecting back on the subject. The men give gifts to themselves. All right, so here it's plural, here it's singular, and it all depends on the subject. He is looking at himself. Spectat, se. Or they are looking at themselves. spectant, se. And he is walking with himself. How about he's talking with himself? Dicit secum, with himself. Right? The se referring back to the subject, him or her or it, self. And like we did with the other pronouns, se is going to be attached directly to the cum, so secum. Or he did it all by himself, per se. So that's the reflexive pronoun. When you see one of these forms, sui, sibi, se, know that it is referring back to the subject. That is, it's the same person or thing as the subject.